Welcome to my art studio. This is my home and studio in the south of France, and I have been here for 2 years now. Hi, my name is Danny and I'm a painter. I make all of my paints from scratch and from nature. I'm also a jewelry designer, selling across shops all over Europe, and an art educator. Before moving to this home in the French countryside, my studio was basically a desk, so I will also give you guys setup ideas for small spaces. If you believe that you cannot paint or do art because you have no space, then I'm here to change your mind. And this is where painting like the ancients will help you to face resistance and start a daily practice. When I used to paint with traditional materials, I did used to paint in my garage due to the mess of acrylics, oil paints, and solvents. Since then, I have given away all of my art materials to artist friends, and everything I work with now is in this box and in these 3 pencil holders. So I have 3 spaces within my studio attic for all my activities. Before I came here, this attic was just abandoned. The previous owners never really did anything here. It was an empty space. But I painted it all white with my partner. My father-in-law put flooring for us, and it became a really nice, cozy space. And this was really important for me because as a small business owner to a jewelry brand, I needed a place that I could have all of my beads, all of my jewelry, and also clock out from to just be able to forget about at the end of the day, because previously my jewelry desk was in my living room, so I was obliged to be constantly cleaning up the mess because it was there with my family life, with my dinner table. It was my living room. There was no separation of my jewelry business and my life, so having this space created a separation of my jewelry business, my work, and my life. So I have 3 spaces within my studio attic for all my activities. So the first space is my jewelry studio, where I have all of my beads, all of my jewelry, and this is where sometimes I have my helpers come and help me make some of the jewelry if it's high season. I like having one studio only for my jewelry because as my jewelry is mainly going to be sent to shops and to customers, I don't want my jewelry next to all of my art materials and my little art mess. So I keep them separate. So this second room here is my art studio, and as you can see, it is very cozy. For me, that was really important. I like to be here, especially when it's raining, because I like listening to the rain fall in the window. Makes a really cozy, soothing sound. I like to be here with my cup of tea. I like to light the lamp. I dim the lights. To me, it feels like a little cabin in the woods. So here's my paint apothecary. I have dried petals, plants. I have onion peels, which I'm collecting here to make dye, to make inks for my art. This drawing table is fantastic. It was my birthday present and it wasn't expensive. It comes from Amazon and my partner got it for me for my birthday. So I love this desk because I use it for painting, I use it for drawing. You can change the position of this desk. For me, it's one of my essentials, this drawing desk. I would highly recommend it to anyone who needs just a little space somewhere in their house to draw or to paint. This is a really old chair. It belonged to my partner before we were even together. It's got paint all over. My daughter used to do a lot of crafts on this chair, but it's very cozy, so I brought it here to my studio. And I like to work sitting down, so it's comfortable for me to sit on. I like having my art displayed around the studio and have many more canvases stocked here, as you can see. So here are the ones that I have stocked. I have a lot of art, a lot of canvases. And I have a lot of my paintings displayed around the studio. So these were the paintings of my first portfolio, all done in traditional oil paints. And basically this Misty series is based on a dream that I had. It was an extremely Jungian dream, a little bit before my 40th birthday, where I dreamt I was an artist, and it just felt like the truth of who I was, my being. I have always done art, but it never really dawned on me that I had this need for painting that had been extremely repressed. And in this dream, there was this canvas filled with mist. So as you can see here, this series is about women in mist because Probably one of my favorite books growing up was The Mists of Avalon. I love stories and I studied film in the past. My major was screenwriting, and what I love the most is stories told in the arc of the heroine's journey versus the hero's journey. Because in every story told around the world, there is this code, and it's either the hero's journey or the heroine's journey. The heroine's journey is probably the work of my life, which is how to retell these stories that have been lost. These stories of, for example, Sophia and Inanna, the first goddesses, and their descent into the underworld. Their stories of death and rebirth before rising. So this is probably encoded in everything that I do, from screenwriting to storytelling to all of the work of art, even my jewelry. There is this code of the heroine's journey. This is my life's devotion. So this Misty series was inspired by my Misty dream and the Mists of Avalon and stories of the divine feminine. But this is the gallery of the new chapter in my life. So these are my paintings made entirely out of earth pigments and the paints that I make from scratch. Some are foraged, some I get here from a local painter who he makes a lot of different pigments. And I also work with mixed media of natural pigments that I get here in France, because there are a lot of awesome local brands that I love working with. And France is actually an exporter of natural pigments for painting. So this is Artemis, one of my first natural pigment paintings. Artemis is very dear to my heart because the day that I was going to this art shop where I was going to buy my first pigments before I started making them, I was driving and a deer crossed the road. The deer is the symbol of Artemis, which is the wild woman archetype. And it was for me a sign that I came here to do this work in collaboration with Gaia, with Mother Earth, with these earthy beings, with these elements and entities that come from nature, because I have a very pan-animism view about life where there is consciousness in everything. There is consciousness in plants, in trees, in flowers. If you have taken psychedelics and plant medicine, you probably have spoken to some of these entities, which I have myself, and seeing that everything is interconnected, everything is alive, everything has a consciousness. So Artemis was my first piece. I absolutely love her, and I have here another Mother Earth, which was inspired by a photograph of a friend of mine who does beautiful photography, very Mother Earth archetype kind of woman. So I painted this piece about the awakening of Gaia, which is the awakening of Mother Earth consciousness, again all in plant pigments. I have here Sophia dreaming, the Gnostic Sophia, and this one was made with this beautiful hibiscus, which I just love. It just created this beautiful ethereal celestial vibe to this painting. And I have Eve here, which I started making Eve with coffee and graphite, and I just loved it so much in this kind of like black and white beige look that I didn't want to put pigments in it. In the end, I left it raw. I just love it raw, kind of like raw like Eve. I also have this painting of this woman in rapture, and there's the moon, there's the water, all of the divine feminine elements. I tend to paint a lot of this pan-animism, moon cult, womb cult, from this past that I feel nostalgic about, because I believe that all women, we have this ancestral memory of what it was like being a woman in a time where everything was sacred, where we were the healers, where we would perform the rituals of fertility and prosperity, and all of these things are innate in us. I see it more and more from working in a lot of women's circles and doing retreats with some of my friends here in the south of France, that women are naturally connected to all of these nature elements. It's this pagan past that we hold within ourselves that we haven't forgotten. And this is a more sensual painting. And so this painting was inspired by one of my favorite stories of the divine feminine, which is the story of the Selkie, the woman who longs for the depths of the sea. She was a shapeshifter. She was a seal woman. You can see her face is full of longing. It's that part of us that longs for creativity, for our expression, for our essence, our skin. And I love the colors of the blues and the coffee. I believe I use a mix of oxides and pastel blue, the pastel blue flower of France from the Qatar region, which I believe is called woodward in English. And this is the media room. And the media room is handy because I can close the door and film while my family is home, or if my daughter has her friends over. I have art materials here on this table too, because I have been now working on making more process videos where I draw and make tutorials of my art. And I can document here my life as an artist and what I do. I actually enjoy coming here and working in this other form of art, which is the documenting style of art. I went to film school and I wanted to be a documentary filmmaker or do films a little bit like the French New Wave, like Godard, or like we say in English, Godard. And I love this kind of filming and love vlogging, which when I went to film school there was no language or reference for vlogging because it was something that didn't exist at that time. But I believe that that was always something I wanted to do. I always wanted to document the world and vlog and share my thoughts and express things and talk to people and share also other points of view. So this little media room is a luxury and it isn't, because I believe art is a necessity, and I just happen to be an artist that works with different forms of expression, from jewelry to visual arts to making films. And I also love writing and making poetry and songwriting. It's all part of my essence. My essence is to create. My essence is creativity, and I just feel alive when I'm creating. I made this cute mermaid palette from seashells I collected at the beach with my daughter. These are my inks, my pigments. I have a big natural earth pigment pastel collection that I will show you here. So this is all locally made in Albi, which is 20 minutes from my home, where they have the biggest Gothic church in Europe and also the Museum of Toulouse-Lautrec. I love these pastel pencils, which are also made with natural oxides and kaolin clay from a very old traditional French brand that I love. I also love charcoal and graphite. Graphite is natural. I love charcoal. I love the way it moves. And it's just one of those classic materials, which is all natural, that have been used since men first started making any kind of art, because the first paintings in the caves that you can see here in France, one of the most famous being Lascaux, is painted with earth pigments and charcoal. I have this basket with old sheets for when I want to paint with inks and mix pigments with water. And I have a lot of batches of holy water that go into my paintings. You see, in alchemy, you add symbols, elements, and blow prayers into your paintings with different elements from nature. And holy water for me is a must for my paintings. I highly recommend a cup such as this one that can be closed with a straw, because an art studio can be messy. And I once did have a sip of inky water, and that was not pleasant. I have this altar here to call in the Divine Mother of Creation. This figurine comes from a local ceramist from my area, because where I live here in the south of France used to be an ancient ceramics producer for the Romans and the Celtics. This figurine of the Divine Mother represents creativity and creation. That's why it's here. Usually while I'm making art, I am sipping on ginger water or rooibos tea. But one of my favorite things is bone broth. I love this bone broth. I find it so soothing and hydrating due to all its minerals. It's just one of my favorite things to sip on while I'm working. So the one that I'm loving this moment has reishi mushrooms, and it comes from a British brand called Planet Paleo. So I need to get some new brushes, but I usually paint a lot with my fingers. I love painting with my fingers. I do a lot of ancient tempera paints with egg yolk and pigments from rocks, or I mix egg yolk with inks and create another form of tempera paints, which is not really traditional. But my process is quite experimental. All I can say is that I do natural pigment mixed media. I also make oil paints with my pigments by adding linseed oil. So art can be an extremely expensive hobby before you start selling. Here are my essential materials, and I will tell you why. So I love having paper and painter's tape, because it's helpful to work with paper when you want to produce a lot. I also love working on canvases, but it's good to boost that production with the paper. And I love framing my paper art with painter's tape. And these are the other essentials. So there is my black graphite. This one is by Faber-Castelli. It's a 14B. I cannot live without this. This Tombow precision eraser is a must. I draw a lot with an eraser, and I also love having a kneaded eraser, which is an eraser that has a texture like chewing gum. You can mold it, because drawing with an eraser is a fundamental part of my process. And these are my pastel pencils from Comté de Paris, the ones that are natural, made with kaolin. These are some essential kitchen staples that any artist can work with. So I make inks from avocados, so I love eating avocados, and then when I'm done with the avocados, instead of throwing out the skin and the seed, I boil them and turn them into ink. I share a lot about how I make my inks in my blog, and some of the inks that I make can be made with teas. So here are some of my favorites: the hibiscus ink, curcuma, rooibos. Rooibos is gorgeous, and I also love working with black tea. I also have worked a lot with coffee, but now I'm actually using more tea than coffee. So with just these, you're actually set. You have a great palette of colors that you can work with, and it doesn't require a lot of space, it doesn't make a mess, and it will last for ages without breaking the bank. You can get a drawing desk like the one that I have from Amazon, or you can work in just a simple table or desk. The important thing that I want to highlight is to have a desk or table set up only with your art, no other clutter, just your art materials, so that you can sit and work on your art practice daily. These are some of my favorite earth pigment books. So I love the work of Rebecca Desnos. She is actually famous for dyeing clothes, but she's so knowledgeable about the pigments, so it has helped me a lot in creating and experimenting with different kitchen staples and plants, which I use a lot in my work of making inks. I also love The Organic Artist by Nick Netto. He has done a lot of research in earth pigments, and this book is fabulous. I just find him very inspiring. This was my first natural pigment book, The Book of Earth, and it's actually on my coffee table because I just find this book so aesthetic. And even the way that Heidi Gustafsson, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, writes is very poetic. So these are 3 must books that every artist needs: Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, and Keep Going by Austin Kleon. Start with Steal Like an Artist. It's a classic book. All artists talk about this book. It's a book you can read easily in 1 hour. It's epic. He's a legend. Another book I would like to mention is The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. I don't have it here now because a friend of mine has borrowed my book, but this book is so inspirational. And it talks about the importance of getting rid of all of these excuses, which Steven Pressfield calls resistance, to do what you're here to do, which is to create. And he talks about being a professional artist versus an amateur artist, which, as an example here for this video, is just creating that art space, your desk with all of your art setup, your materials, so that every day you can wake up and sit and do the work. Even if you have to do the work at night for 15 minutes, it's just seeing yourself as a professional artist as if it was your job and not a hobby, because what you have is so sacred and so precious, We all have something important to say. So get The War of Art by Steven Pressfield and you will finish it in a rainy Saturday. Another important one is The Artist's Way. So The Artist's Way is based on the work of Julia Cameron, another classic in the art world. This book has incredible tips on gathering inspiration and self-care for artists, which is really important because artists are vessels for creativity. So we need to take care of ourselves. And this book, I would say, is the self-care Bible for artists. Another favorite is The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin. So Rick Rubin to me is such a beautiful philosopher. It's all about the importance for artists viewing their point of view as something sacred. We can all bring our unique way of seeing, of expressing into the conversation of the world, into creating the service that our art was here to provide. Art is service, and this book really explains that in such a beautiful way. Another favorite of mine, Women Who Runs with Wolves. So this one is by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. It's a really famous book. It's a cult book, and it is all about the importance of women to connect to their wild woman archetype. The wild woman archetype is our untamed soul. It's our inner child. It's that need to express ourselves and to exist without the judgment, the need for play. And it's all of the stories of the divine feminine again, on the importance of women to connect to their feminine creation nature, which Carl Jung said was essential for women because we are the oracles of our time. If we don't connect to our intuition, to our inner guidance, we will end up stagnant, we will end up lifeless, with that longing like the selkie for soul food for our skin. So these three are the Jungian and alchemical art books that I love. Some of them are not quite art books. So as an artist who also studied expressive art therapy, which is very much Jungian, based on the work of Carl Jung, this is one of my favorite books, which is on psychological and visionary art. So in this book, he actually talks about how important it is to use the imagination for healing, to getting access within our psyche for healing ourselves with our art. And it's an analysis that he did on Nerval's book Ohelia, and how the writer Nerval was able to heal himself through writing a novel called Ohelia. He worked on this book while he was locked in one of these facilities where patients would be locked up to heal and to withdraw from the world. Brilliant book. So if you're a fan of Carl Jung, then probably you're also a fan of symbols. And what is art without symbols? Our psyche, our soul speaks in terms of symbols because words sometimes does not translate into the full meaning of an experience or of a message. Symbols and imagery becomes language of the soul. And I love this book, which is The Woman's Dictionary of Symbols. I used it a lot in my jewelry brand, and I still work with this book in my art. I love reading about symbols, and as a person who does a lot of inner work, I understand well how I get these symbols and these images that open a door of what needs to be explored. This is sigil craft, which is again about symbols and how to infuse them into your art. It's very alchemical. I'm very much into alchemy, Gnosis. I'm into the Rosicrucian and Cathar mystical Christianism, also paganism, because in this area of France, which is the lands of the Cathars, it was actually a land where Christian mysticism and paganism blended. And the symbols are a big part of my work, so love this one. Right, 2 other random books that I'm going to recommend here for artists. So one is A Course in Miracles, where it talks about the importance of being a teacher in the way of love. I believe we can all tap into our teacher archetype and teach the way of love, the path of love. And the beauty is that artists, we can do that through our art. So we can be expressing universal core values such as love within our art, to infuse our art with meaning and to uplift humanity. and this one is a childhood favorite, The Never-Ending Story. So what I love about this book and other books that I've read of Michael Ende and The Never-Ending Story also inspired the movie Never-Ending Story. So the beauty of The Never-Ending Story, it is actually a teaching embedded in fiction on the importance of the imagination. I truly believe in the power of imagination for healing the soul, for healing the world. Because what makes us remarkable as a species is that we have this ability to imagine and to create from a place which is invisible, which is this weird place called imagination, which is to me a sacred dimension. And a lot of traditions around the world talk about imagination being this sacred dimension. So we can tap into this dimension, we can go there, and we can bring back into our reality a seed that we can plant and that we can create beautiful statues such as Michelangelo's David, or otherworldly dreamy architecture such as the architecture of Gaudi. And you know what a beautiful thing to be human, that we can tap into our imagination and co-create with the creator and build worlds within worlds. So The Never-Ending Story is an all-time favorite of mine, where it talks about this world of imagination and the importance of imagining, and it's filled of beautiful spiritual messages for artists and everybody. I highly recommend this book to reconnecting to your inner child, the part of you that longs to dream. So whether you have a studio or just a desk, creating that sacred space to create is the thing that will enhance your creativity, because creativity is who you are. We're all born creative. We all have unique ideas and point of view. But like Virginia Woolf said in one of her essays, we all need a room of our own, a room to create and to see our art as essential as brushing our teeth daily is. So we all have time to scroll on social media or watch Netflix. I'm guilty of these too. But we also all do have time to create, and we all have time to create beauty and to collaborate in making this world more beautiful and more loving. So if you want to unblock your creativity, I have created a mind-blowing free masterclass I'm very proud of. You can find it in the link below. I have people tell me that this masterclass has changed their view on creative block and opened that channel, which was always there, but had been blocked for some reason or another. You know, we all come here to heal each other, and that's what artists do. And I'm thankful for all of the artists and people who've come into my life and have brought me healing. And we're all in this path of life just remembering who we are. We all have that divine creative spark within us. And so with that, I'd like to close. Stay tuned to my next videos. I create videos on natural pigments. I will be sharing more tutorials and the things that are inspiring me as an artist. Please hit like and subscribe, and see you next time. Ciao!